going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members-only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the SWAC Talk crew for 99 cents and get down with the get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, SWAC smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both SWAC Talk, Twitter SWAC Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Your guy. Wednesday, Sundays, catch the ride. Football hoops, we breaking wide. Stats and facts, truth on high. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Hit the corner of the field, we strategize. Breaking the game down, no disguise. Play by play, we analyze. I wear sharp, we magnify. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel.
All right, everybody, what is going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk. Of course, this is the show where we cover the SWAC inside and out. And I am your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells. Coming at you, and today we're gonna continue our 12-team previews. Man, I decided to jump it off a day early on the weekend, so we're gonna have two this weekend. We got Bama A&M yesterday, got Alabama State today. And then we'll continue on as scheduled from Alcorn on. And if you want to get the schedule of when my previews are dropping, you can find those on my socials. SWAC Talk on Instagram and Facebook, and SWAC Talk 76 on Twitter. I have a post there. I'm going to make sure I pin it so you can find when each preview will be dropping. So I was excited, so I wanted to go ahead and get a couple out now. Man, I couldn't really wait to have the first one drop today. So I dropped one yesterday, gonna drop this one today, and then we'll be back on schedule after that. So with that being said, man, we're gonna go ahead and start this thing off with no further delay. We're gonna talk about the Hornets. Last season, 7-5, 5-3 in conference. Coach Eddie Robinson enters his 4th year at Alabama State. And ironically, he is the senior head coach in the league in terms of, tenure at his respective school in the SWAC. So the league is basically, all, still fresh with coaches. And now the guy who came in that a lot of people didn't even know if he would be able to, do anything because he was a guy who didn't come in with a head coaching background is now the head guy, the top guy in terms of tenure. And his team is right there in the mix the last couple of years, play here, play there. Their season could have been a lot different last year. They lost a game to Grambling on a missed field goal. That they lost a 6-point game to Jackson State. The other loss was, I think, 15 to FAMU, but that was a game they were in early. So, there were opportunities for them in these games, and Bama State has been known for defense. Their defense was basically tops in the league in almost every category. And so, when you have that, everything else can kind of take its time and develop. But last season, adversity really struck the Hornets hard, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Their quarterback room got demolished. Kind of like Thanos came through and eliminated everybody. They ended up playing Kareem Key, who was a kid who came in as a wide receiver. He played quarterback in high school. He came in as a wide receiver at Alabama State. They moved him back to quarterback in an emergency situation, and he ended up playing in 7 games, I believe, or so. It might have been 9, but he played. He played in the majority of the season. Um, so he really was able to kind of hold down the fort, not necessarily, set the world on fire, but he didn't crash the car either. He had some really solid games, had a couple, big passing games, had a couple games where he looked like a guy who, you know, was thrown into the fire. But, offensively, they were able to find a running game, which is something that they hadn't really had that great in recent years. And when you look at what this team did offensively, they were 6th in scoring offense at 22.7 points per game, led the league in scoring defense at 16.7 points per game. So when your defense barely giving up 2 touchdowns, you don't have to do a lot to win games. And if you're comfortable winning games 17-14, 21-14, 24-17, then you can survive with a team like this. They were 8th in total offense at 312 yards per game, averaged 5.6 yards per play with 26 touchdowns. Led the league in total defense, 265 yards per game, 4.2 yards per play. That number also was the fewest in the league. They finished 4th in rushing last season at 169 yards per game, averaged 4.4 yards per carry, and they had 12 touchdowns on the ground. Defensively, they led the league in rushing at 106.3 yards per game, 11 touchdowns allowed, 2.8 yards per carry. Really, really dominant in the run game. On defense, passing wise, they were 11th at 143 yards per game, 14 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions comparatively. 54% completion rate, 1,725 yards. That number is not surprising. With a guy who really was kind of figuring things out. Offensively, they just didn't really, flow in the past game, but they were able to run the ball, in most games, and they did well there. They were 2nd in passing defense at 159 yards per game, gave up 11 touchdowns, had 17 interceptions on the season, which led the league. They also registered 39 sacks, which led the league. They gave up 18, which led the league. So they did a really good job of protecting the quarterback. And when you look at having, so many guys back there at the position, guys that don't really have a lot of experience, to only give up 18 sacks is a true testament to that offensive line. Now, if you remember a few years ago, that offensive line was extremely young and kind of porous, but they've gotten better over time, which is what happens when you can keep a group together. And now you have a unit that can take care of everything. They finished last season at 32% on third down. Again, that's kind of understandable. And which was 10th, and they were 3rd in third down defense at 30.9%. They finished 6th and 4th down conversions at 45%. They went for it 11 times. That was actually the lowest number in the league. So it didn't really take a lot of chances on 4th downs. Defensively, it was 2nd in 4th down defense with 30.8%. Opponents went for it 26 times, which was the 2nd most in the league. And that's, again, understandable when the team offense can't really move the ball. They're going to have to try to go for it on 4th down and try to make some things happen. Red zone offense, they finished 7th. They were 27 to 35 in the red zone for 77%, 12 touchdowns, 7 on the ground, 5 through the air. They were 15 of 19 on field goals. They turned the ball over 3 times, 1 fumble and 2 turnovers on downs. Defensively, it was second in the red zone, 20 or 25 for 80%. They were 16 touchdowns, 11 rushing, 5 passing. Opponents were 4 or 6 on field goals, and they had 2 takeaways in the red zone, both were interceptions. So when you look at that, um, the one key question about this team is, defensively, they took some heavy losses on defense. So the main thing that you kind of want to look at is this team gonna be able to maintain where they are, and they're when I say I feel like they're gonna take a slight step back, I don't mean they're gonna be a horrible defense. They might just finish number 2 or number 3 instead of number 1. But they do have a new defensive coordinator, and they lost. Uh, they lost basically the all the top all the top statistical leaders on their defense, but they have a mentality and a framework that they can plug guys in if guys are ready to play and are willing to be physical and do the job that they need to do. The talent is there. I mean, this cupboard is not bare, but when you look at kind of what they're returning, um, it's not flashy in terms of names, but Terrell Lightfoot is the leading guy on the defensive line. Had 18 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. They brought in Dietrich Jones from Valley, a guy who played in 20 games, had 40 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and two fumble recoveries. A guy like that is gonna be hungry to prove himself, and so that's the kind of guy that can really flourish on this defensive line. There's a lot of opportunities for other guys to come in and make some things happen. So I look forward to seeing these guys, how they mesh. I think early in the season is gonna be, kind of up and down, but um, when when you lose so much, you got to have other guys step up in the linebacker core. Rudy Jean Louis returns, 11 games of action, 22 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. Also, Denzel Johnson is also another guy who comes back at that position. Um, didn't really register a lot. Had 16 tackles in 9 games. Had a pass breakup and 3 quarterback hurries. Also had 2 block kicks. So that's a guy that's definitely gonna be active in that realm of special teams. But like I said, it's just like I said, there's so many holes to fill, but I think the talent is there. Secondary, Keen Lewis leads that group. He's an all conference guy this season, the preseason. Uh, when you look at what he did last season, 40 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 2 pass breakups, a quarterback hurry, two fumble recoveries, a forced fumble, and a block kick. Also, you have Phillips and Twilly Lovett also coming back, and Sims. Those are guys who can really, kind of fill in. Um, Trey Phillips had 18 tackles in 11 games. Also had a tackle for loss and an interception. Um, Lovett had 15 tackles in 11 games. He had a pass breakup to his credit. So like I said, the opportunity for guys to kind of make some things happen on that deal on all aspects of defense is there. And like I said, I don't really panic over the defense because they that has been the calling card for the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't really see that as anything different. Every so often, they lose guys and they seem to find guys to plug in. So I don't really see it being that much of a difference here. The one thing they may take a step back on defense is the takeaways. They had 27 takeaways, I believe it was. Last season they had 17 interceptions and 17 interceptions and 10 fumble recoveries. So they had 27 takeaways last season and only turned the ball over 18 times. So they were +9 on the season, which that might take a step back. The sack number might take a step back, and some of those some of those statistics will probably take a slight step back, but this defense, I think is still going to be a cornerstone of this team. But to me, I think this team is going to be more of an offensive team this season. The talent is there. Like I said, you return a guy in Jamari Holdsclaw, running back who got injured, but really had a solid season before he got injured. He had 74 carries for 472 yards and a touchdown. He also had 7 catches for 72 yards. Um, so that was a guy who really was coming into his own before he went down in the Magic City Classic. That guy is gonna really make this offense flourish on the ground. Also, Marcus Harris returns. He had 248 yards and 2 touchdowns on the season, and also Jabari Kirkendall had 136 yards on the ground. And that doesn't count a guy like Andrew Body, who even in his one game of action last season ran for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. So whether and we're gonna get to that now, but whether he is the guy or Kareem Key is the guy, or a guy like Smoot also who transferred in, a guy who Coach E. Rob was really high on at media day, Tayshawn Smoot, coming in from Jacksonville State. If there's any of those guys, their running game is going to be there for you. So that definitely helps this offense flourish. And they also return basically the bulk of their pass catchers. They lose Robert McMinn, who was their leading receiver in terms of yardage and touchdowns, and also a top return man. But they return four of their top five guys. Asa Gregg had 15 catches for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. Eric Horn, 9 catches, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Jones, 19 catches, 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. And AJ Harrell had 16 catches for 157 yards and a touchdown. So those numbers aren't spectacular, but when you return that much talent and guys who have experience, because all those guys played in at least 10 games, so that's experience. When you put that with a quarterback in either Kareem Key, who, like I said, in his fill-in time last season, unexpectedly played in 9 games, 82 of 140, 1,355 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. When you put a guy like that, can he take the next step? He had the spring to kind of develop a little bit more. Like I said, you're bringing in a couple transfers, but Andrew Body is also back, and he's healthy. Last season didn't necessarily have a great passing game against North Carolina Central. He was 4 for 6 for 27 yards, but he had a tremendous running game in that game, and that's a dual threat aspect that he brings to the offense that can really kind of help some things happen. Key ran the ball 45 times for 55 yards last season and 2 touchdowns, but I really think the quarterback being able to move around is going to also help this offense. And like I said, with a back coming back who has shown some explosiveness, because Holdsclaw had a 67-yard run last season. You got that explosiveness there. The passing game, like I said, you have guys who also can make big plays. Two of your top returning guys had a catch longer than 60 yards. So, the deep ball can be there. I just, like I said, I just think this team is probably going to be more focused offensively. It may take a little while for the defense to get going, but I think with a running game like they have, you should be very solid there. And like I said, having a quarterback that can run the ball is going to help. Having guys that you can, get the ball to in the passing game is definitely going to help. And so, regardless of which one of I'm looking at it as a two-man race. Of course, maybe Smoot is a lot closer than it may appear on the outside looking in, but I look at it as a two-man race. And experience-wise, even though he's missed basically the last 2 seasons, other than basically 2 games. 2 out of 24 games, Andrew Body's been healthy. I think that's a guy who still had a couple years of starting experience. So I think that still gives him a leg up, in a lot of aspects. And so I would not be surprised if he took the first snaps in the first game against UAB. If for nothing else, then he's a guy to put in the work, and he has that experience. Um, and having, I think either way you go, I think you're in a good position with that spot. You have depth there, which is something that a lot of teams don't have. A lot of teams have numbers, but they don't necessarily have the quality depth, and so that's something that really can help this team a lot. And to me, that is the biggest thing that everybody's looking at. I think, other than Alabama and this is probably the most anticipated quarterback race in the league, um, because you have two guys who have basically had 4 seasons of starts, and so that makes things a little bit interesting. Um, and that's really where we shake up at. Um, on the special teams aspect of things, they like I said, they lose Robert McMahon, who was a guy who was very explosive in the return game. When you lose a guy like that, it kind of sets you back a little bit. That's a guy who averaged uh, 9.4 yards per punt return, but he averaged 20.8 yards per kickoff return. That's hitting yardage. Last season, he didn't necessarily have his greatest season. He did have a 58-yard punt return, but in previous seasons, he had been very explosive there. AJ Harrell is the leading returner in both aspects. He actually had a pretty if he had more returns and his yardage went up, he would definitely be a top guy. I mean, he's showing the potential. In 4 returns, he averaged 28 and a half yards per return. So with a longer 43. So he could be that guy. He's showing in limited reps, he's showing the explosiveness. So, he could be that guy in the return game. He also had 46 yards on kick returns, on 5 kick returns. So that's a guy that could get it done. I mean, like I said, definitely, if for nothing else, in the punt return game, he showed some ability there. Brandon Gilliam comes back as the field goal kicker. He's 19 of 27 on the season, 7 of 8 from 20 to 29 yards, 7 of 11 from 30 to 39 yards, and 5 of 7 from 40 to 49 yards. Did miss a 50-yarder. His long on the season was 49. Did not have a kick block, so that's definitely a good thing there. Harrison Tuck returns as the punter. 47 punts, 1,864 yards, giving him an average of 39.6 yards per punt with a longer 62. Had 5 touchbacks, 10 punts fair caught, and 11 punts inside the 20, 350+ yard punts. So special teams, this team is solid. And they had, they dropped that Ramlin game because of a missed field goal, but I think they're trying to really not have that happen again. So that unit is gonna be solid, and this is a solid team all around. Like I said, when you have a unit like they've had on defense, you can plug in. So I think the talent is there. I don't think the cupboard is bare. So like I said, it may take a couple of weeks for them to kind of get their footing, but I think this team is definitely a team that can challenge for making a run at the division. Um, to me, this is a money year. You know what I'm saying? It's year 4. You won 6 games, then you won 7, then you won 7 again. Last season, you were basically in the mix for the division going into the later portion of the season before you dropped the unexpected game on the road, and then you lost to Jackson State, but to knock you out of the race. But this is a team. They have to win those big games. And so that's to me that's where the question comes. The schedule is pretty interesting. They open up with UAB on the road. They get Southern on the road as well in a non-conference matchup. So there's not as much pressure in that game right there. I think that game is a toss-up because both teams have questions and it's early in the season. So that's definitely a toss-up game. Now you come back for Miles, which is your first home game. Miles bringing in a new coach. Of course they play you tough, but new coach, who knows what they'll be. But you should be fine there. After that, you get you jump in the SWAC play there with a game in Tallahassee against Florida A&M. These two teams are probably the two teams that are going to be fighting for second place. Unless they can pull off some upsets here and there. But that's a big matchup on the road. They haven't had a lot of success against FAMU, but they've been in these games. And if you want to challenge for the division, this is the kind of game that you have to win. I do have it marked as a toss-up because, like I said, FAMU, they have their questions right now. So neither team, I think, would be heavy favorites if they played. After that, you come home for Bethune-Cookman, which is a game you will be favored in. Honestly, regardless of what's going on, you probably be favored in that game. And then you go to Jackson State. So you have tough the two toughest teams in the division besides yourself in your first three games of conference play. And then you throw in the Mag City Classic 2 weeks after that. You're basically done with division play. So you could be head first in the race, or you could be ass out of the race by this point. So that Jackson State game is big. It's on the road. You have had success against Jackson State. So that's not a daunting task for them. But I don't know if defensively they can. They're defensively where they'll be at that point. They should be gelling pretty well by that portion of the season. The offense should be solid. So I definitely think they're going to have a great matchup there. Like I said, FAMU is a toss-up. Bethune-Cookman, a game that they most likely should win. And then the Magic City Classic, I do have that down as a win for them. That will get them 4 in a row, but you never count out either team in this matchup. Strange things always happen, so who knows? But going into this game right now, I think you're ahead. After that, you hit the road to Prairie View. I'm gonna say this every time I talk about Prairie View. That team is intriguing because the unknown is huge. So they could be one of the better teams in the league, or they could be one of the middle teams in the league. I don't think they'll be worse than that, but they could be anywhere. And coming off of the Magic City Classic, who know, if you play well and win that game, are you gonna be a little too high coming out of that game? If you drop it, are you gonna be, unfocused? So I think that game, I wouldn't necessarily call it a trap game because I don't think, to me, a trap game is a game that is before a bigger game, and you're not as focused, and you could drop it if you're not focused. But this is just another game that I think is a big game, and it's on the road. So the bulk of your tough games are away from home in conference play. So that makes the schedule a little bit more daunting. You close out at home against Texas Southern, which again should be a team that could be in the mix, or they could be in the middle of the pack. You get Valley and Mobile, which was a Valley home game, but now it's in Mobile, so that's basically a home game for you. And then you close out the conference schedule with UAPB and then Tuskegee. So you should be able to close out the schedule on a nice run. This schedule is top heavy in the front, and so how you come out of that is going to dictate how this season goes. If you 2-1 after your first 3 games, or 3-0, I think a division title is definitely within your grasp. If you're 1-2, it gets dicey, and if you 0-3, it's over. So the first 3 conference games are huge. This schedule kind of breaks up into chunks. You have 3 non-conference games there at the beginning. You should be okay in a couple of them. One is the FBS game, but the other 2 are gonna be tough but manageable. Then you have those first 3 conference games. Then you go Magic City Classic, Prairie View, and Texas Southern, and then you close out with 3 games that you should win. So I do have them with a win total of 8.5, but for my preview, I had them at 8-4, 6-2 in conference. I think they'll probably drop If they don't drop FAMU, they'll probably drop, maybe Prairie View. But I have them winning 6 games in conference and winning 8 overall. This is a team that if they can put it together, this is a championship caliber team. If some pieces come together, they could be a championship caliber team. Otherwise, they'll probably be it'll probably be another 7-win season. And so I think this kind of like what I said about Alabama and them in my previous preview. The Bulldogs, I consider them like landlocked. I don't really necessarily think Alabama State's landlocked because there is opportunity for movement on top, but it's gonna take some work to make that movement, and you're gonna have to make it yourself because you're not really gonna jump anybody if you don't beat them. Um, they do have, the conference has Alabama State picked third in the East. I have them second. So even though I think it's probably more of a tie type situation, but you have to. That FAMU game is probably the biggest game on the schedule, at, other than like the Match City Classic, because that's your first conference game, and it's on the road, and that could set the tone for the rest of your season. I do think that, like I said, I do think this team will be a solid team. I think they have a really good chance to be good, and I think they have an outside chance at the division if they can make some things happen. And you don't really, when you got ifs, how certain are you? And so I'm probably not that certain, but I do think that this team will be. I think they will be right there in the mix. And so with this being, like I said, a money year for them, they have to win those big games. And if they can do that, then the sky's the limit. If they can't, then they'll be right pretty much where they're typically been at that 3 spot. So that's gonna do it for our show today. Like I said, we'll be back with our all-corn preview later on in the week. If you want to see when each team's preview will be dropping, I do have the schedule on my socials. So definitely go and check that out. And with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See Well signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.